Yeah, so much to look forward to right here on Nine's Wide World of Sports, but I'm looking forward to this. Inside the 10, welcome Michael Shamus, Mark Levy and Gus Warland. Great to have you all on. Let's get stuck in now. First topic, should the NRL provide salary cap relief for lower ranked teams?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting point because a lot of these teams that have been down the bottom have been down the bottom for a while now. We talk the Bulldogs, the Tigers, the Dragons. Even though the Warriors have sort of had a good year this year, they've been down the bottom for a long time. You could probably throw the Titans into that, the Knights. It just feels like it's getting harder and harder to get out of the hole that these teams find themselves in. And then they make these decisions to overpay because play managers are smart. To go to a club that's down the bottom of the ladder, they try and extract more money, and then we get situations like we see with Dave Fafita and Tino Fasuamala-Awi where you start to put clauses in. Stefano has a clause in his contract at the Tigers that if they don't make the 8 that he can leave. And you get yourselves into a situation where it's just so hard to get out of. And I think Gus has sort of explained that about the Bulldogs, how long it's taking there. Even if you have salary cap money, which is what the Tigers and Dogs do going forward, then it's a matter of finding people to replace them.
You want exemptions?
I just think there needs to be, I don't know if it's a salary cap exemption, there's something's got to be put into place, I feel, to help the teams down the bottom because it's taking too long. I don't think it's good for rugby league that the Tigers and Bulldogs have been out of the finals for 8 or 10 or 12 years.
Why is that the NRL's fault, though?
It's not their fault. I'm just saying they could assist the clubs now.
I just think you're rewarding mediocrity if you want to give salary cap exemptions to, we're talking 3 clubs with a huge supporter base, all financially sound. It should be on them to make up for the bad decision-making they've made over the last few years. It's not the NRL's problem to come and fix the way in which they're being governed at a club level. That's on the club.
You don't think the players, the clubs, are paying overs, the teams down the bottom? Well, they have to pay overs, right?
They have to pay overs to attract certain players to their clubs.
So they're paying...
They are paying overs, but do you think that could be a Band-Aid effect in the fact that if there are, problems within the club that aren't getting fixed, if you're just throwing money at the situation, you're just sort of covering up everything that's going on internally?
Exactly. Do whatever you want and you know you're going to be looked after by the NRL. It's ridiculous. So absolutely not. And they've got to get themselves out of their situation. Let's say the Bulldogs, for instance, have a look at what they've got at the moment in terms of their squad and who they're getting next year and stuff. Like, that's a side that should be in the top 8. Yep. If the fact that they're not, well, that's up to the club. It's not the NRL.
They're only really getting Stephen Crichton for next year on top of the team that's already struggling. I know they had some injuries, but it's just taking a long time, and I don't think it's good for rugby league to have these powerhouse clubs struggling. Like Parramatta are finally realising their potential. They were struggling for 10 years.
But we talk about the Gold Coast Titans. What imbecile allowed Tino Fasuamala-Awi's contract to have a get-out clause in relation to Holbrook? That's ridiculous. That's poor governance. The NRL should be looking back and asking questions of the NRL as to suggest why was that allowed to be put into his contract in the first place.
They've never had more power than they do now, though, Mark. Like and I'm not saying it's good for the game for the player managers to have that much power, but that's the assurances that clubs down the bottom have to give because they are competing against clubs that are going to pay less to get them. I feel like something... I get your point on making a fair bit, like a salary cap that needs to be level across the field, but something has to give because it's just impossible. And now with the Bulldogs, Gus has to resort to, and they should have been done anyway, is developing these kids, these pathways coming through, and that's a 4 or 5 year project. That's not overnight. I just don't think it's good for the game.
I do understand what you mean, especially for, Tigers fans watching on. It's not an enjoyable situation for them. But moving on to the next topic, do the Tigers need to pick between Benji and Scott Fulton? We are hearing that there are differences of opinions in terms of recruitment.
I've got an idea on this one.
There you go.
Given all the decision-making at the West Tigers seems to be made at a very popular Italian restaurant, why don't they get Scott, Benji, Lee Hadjipantelis, Justin Pascoe? Why don't they get them all around a table and sort out their differences for the good of the club? What's it been, 13 years without success, and now they're arguing over a recruitment manager? I mean, come on, West Tigers, you can do better than that. Well, who's running the show?
Well, who makes a decision without Benji Marshall knowing what's going on? So when they bring it in, Tim Sheens for a couple of years, Benji right next to him, and they're going to take it on from there. Any decisions made which Benji's going to have to deal with, surely he's in that conversation. Like,
in terms of recruitment?
Of course. I mean,
or bringing Scott Fulton into the club you're talking about.
Any decision. Yeah. Bringing new different pies into the canteen all the way up to the recruit manager, which is a big one.
We've had a few pies, Jussie.
We sure have.
We've had a few pies.
we say at the end of the day, we're going to bring a bloke in, recruit manager. Would you like to be this bloke? He should be in that conversation, Danica. No doubt in the world. Why would someone do that?
But now that Fulton is in the position, isn't it his job to be in charge of the recruitment?
No.
Well, who's in charge of the club at the end of the day when they're not winning games? Who's next on the line? At the moment, it's Sheens. Soon it'll be Benji, and that could be on the back of someone that he may not want to be there.
I think the question was, is it time for the club to move on one of them? It's not there yet, but it's heading down that way.
So you get rid of Benji before he even starts?
No, you're not going to get rid of Benji. If
So they
someone's
pay out
going to lose
another
there, it's not
official.
going to be Benji Marshall.
So they pay out
more
Scott
years.
Fulton?
Well, he wouldn't be on anywhere near as much as Benji or a contract as long as Benji. It's not getting to that point. It's not at that point yet, but it's going to get pretty toxic by the looks of things. And the differing of opinions between Benji Marshall and Scott Fulton, it's become problematic. And not only is that, it's starting to get... I don't think they're getting along. And it's spreading amongst the game. And I've spoken to key people at the Tigers. They're aware this is becoming a problem. The other problem they've got right now is they've gone into bed with the other player agents who are aligned to Scott Fulton, whom we've mentioned, and they're frustrated with the direction the Tigers are going in. These player managers, as we spoke about earlier, have such a big say in the way clubs are operated. If they're not happy with the direction that Benji and Tim Sheens are going, you can be assured that those young Tigers kids who they've got, they're going to be looking elsewhere.
It backs
and
up
that's not a good thing.
Which is a bad situation
They hold
to be
too much
in.
power. So at the moment, Scott Fulton has the backing of those player managers who are concerned about the direction of the club, but the Tigers have put all their time and their future in the hands of Benji Marshall. Benji Marshall has to have the say. He's the coach.
I declare an interest here because, you know, I worked with Scott's late father, Bob, and a rugby league, an immortal, a very powerful man in rugby league circles. Scott Fulton has, like you say, the ear of player managers, and he's a very influential person. The West Tigers at the moment need someone in a very powerful position like recruitment to attract some players to the club. It's all well and good to have your Benjis, to have your Robbies, to have your Tim Sheens, who, how long do we know he's going to be the coach for? But I think Scott Fulton's a great appointment. It's up now to Benji and the people in those coaching positions to realise his value to the club, and if they all get on the same page for the good of the club...
If they all get on the same page.
Then they're going to head in the right direction.
But should Benji have been asked about Scott Fulton?
Of course he should have. That was a ridiculous
Whoever
decision.
made that decision, he's the clown here.
I just think there's
a few clowns at Concord.
There's a big problem brewing there. It's a big problem brewing.
Ahead, that's for sure, for the Tigers. All right, well, some comments during the week. AFL CEO Gil McLachlan suggested that Queensland is an AFL state.
Hello.
Is he a stand-up comedian now he's leaving the job?
True or false?
Well, false, of course. Absolutely false. I mean, basically that Gold Coast club has had that much money poured into it, so much effort put into it, and it hasn't been a success at all. It's one of those places where people move a little bit older. They've already got a team. You know, so all of a sudden the Suns becomes their second team, which means you don't invest as much as you need to if it's absolutely in your heart.
Well, I wrote down the comment that he made on a Melbourne radio station, 3AW, will be a bigger participation sport by the end of the year than the NRL for the first time in history, and will be the biggest sport in that market within 5 to 10 years on most metrics. Given the interview was done at 9:30 in the morning, he wasn't on the drink, but they've got 68,000 participants, 350 community clubs, 4 NRL clubs, 3 NRLW teams, 2 winning State of Origin teams. The bloke's off his head. Rugby league is still the main sport in Queensland.
You know what? I wrote a story on participation numbers in sport, mainly revolved around rugby league last year. And having done so, I spoke to a lot of other sporting organisations. Do you know what the AFL do? They count all the odds kick numbers. So every time they go to a school and they do a program with the kids there, in which you pay $5, $10, whatever it is, to do your Oz Kick program, they count as participation numbers.
You can register your Labrador as an AFL member too.
My son's
so
apparently a member of the GWS Giants. I didn't even know about it.
Really?
Yeah, I keep getting sent free tickets. We do.
Have you been yet?
No, not yet. Sorry, Ollie.
All right, well, next question. Has Freddie been let down by some former Blues players and the media?
Michael, you can tackle this one, given you seem to write a lot of stories around Origin. Look, I've gone on record. Last time I was here, I got called a cheerleader for daring to be positive about the New South Wales Origin team. I think the media, has let down Freddie. I think the media has let down the New South Wales Origin team, and I think the agendas out there at the moment need to be called out. I'm glad Freddie's doing that. I've spoken to people at the New South Wales Rugby League who are puzzled by it. And, you know, Game 3 on Wednesday night, New South Wales win. At full time, there were stories posted online by certain journalists calling into question Freddie's future as coach, despite the fact that they just won a game of football. I mean, can't we give credit where it's due, Michael?
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you on whether or not there are agendas, but I don't think, I'm not just saying Freddie, but coaches who don't win games of football, they naturally come under criticism, and that's what Freddie has done at the moment.
He's won 3 series, he's lost 3 series.
Yeah, I
so we want to
understand.
punt the coach over 50%.
No, I'm not saying punt the
record.
coach. I'm just saying criticism in general is warranted, right, for teams that don't deliver what they're hopeful to deliver. But you're right. The agendas, the agenda. No,
Tom Trebojevic, Nathan
I'm not
Cleary,
saying
Latrell Mitchell. I mean,
I'm not
come
saying
on.
this in this situation that Freddie deserves to be punted. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is criticism is part of the game, and it is in such a big platform like Origin. If you don't deliver, that's the natural outcome. Doesn't mean you get rid of the coach. But what you're talking about, though, is deliberate attacks, personal attacks on the coach and the coaching staff because of where they work. I understand.
Yeah.
And Freddie has every right to be upset about it, but I don't think you can say people shouldn't be critical of performances, selections. That's all part of this game, not just Origin, Rugby League. That's just part of it. And it's happened.
And also, people are passionate about State of Origin in particular. It's one thing that we all get together again. All the club supporters get behind New South Wales or Queensland. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been called a cheerleader as well all the way through it. Simple fact is there a better person that can take on this side?
No.
And I don't think there is. And I think they showed that on Wednesday night, the way that they played for him. And he's unearthed a couple of players there that people went, why are you picking him for? Badman Best would be one of those. He's an absolute star, and you know that he's going to be there for a long time. So let's give some credit where credit's due and get behind him.
Good on you, guys.
And answered the critics. I think it's a
Definitely.
way to go out for
That's
New
it.
South
People
Wales.
can throw whatever they want from the cheap seats.
Yeah.
But he's actually stepping up and doing a job, not just in those 3 games, but building up the love for New South Wales all around the state, where he's out there doing all the great work that he does.
Yeah.
Pom-poms. Gussie and I, pom-poms.
I'll get my gear off if you like.
Here we go. We're going to bring some pom-poms in for next week, see what will happen. All right, plenty more still coming your way on the Sunday Footy Show. Up next, we're going to be looking back at all the future stars that emerged from the under-19 State of Origin.